Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Welcome to today's webinar on All Small Focus with the Small Business Administration. My name is Catherine Walsh and I am with NBDC PTAC and I will be your moderator today. PTAC is part of the Nebraska Business Development Center. We are a statewide program and we offer government contracting services that include assistance with registrations, assistance with 8A, HubZone, women-owned, veteran-owned small business certifications and self-certifications, proposal and bid review, and assistance with post-award processes such as debriefs, contract compliance, and invoice submission. So we have moved to all virtual events for the remainder of the year. The next virtual workshop will be a webinar that is part of our Joshua Frank series and covers socioeconomic statuses. You can find that event and all our events on our events page where there is a link right now up on your screen. Coming up in less than a month, it's almost September, can't believe it. We are having part 1 of our Meet the Buyers conference. So we have decided to hold our conference in 2 parts this year due to COVID-19, and they will both be virtual. The first part is on September 11th, and it will be a half-day event of virtual presentations and speakers. We will have Joshua Frank from RSM Federal. GSA will return to do another presentation on updates and changes. And then we will also have John Maddox speaking, a lawyer speaking on mentor-protege program and joint ventures. So you can sign up for this half-day event on our eCenter page as well. Then part 2 of the conference will take place on October 20th and allow you to meet one-on-one with federal agencies and buyers. And so we have the full list of agencies participating in that October 20th event on our conference webpage, which you can find at ptac.unomaha.edu/meetthebuyers. You can also find a sign up or registration for that as well. If you register through our eCenter page for that October 20th event, you will be sent a link to sign up for specific session slots in the coming months. So you can always email me as well if you can't find the event you're looking for or have any questions. My email is cwalsh, W-A-L-S-H, @unomaha.edu. Okay, so let's get started today. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box or the question box. And I will address everyone's questions at the end. So I see a few questions already and I will make sure to get those at the end. I would also like to note that unfortunately we are not able to send out the PowerPoint slides for the webinar. I just wanted to give you a heads up. So if you want to take notes, please do so. I will also be recording this webinar. So if you'd like a link to access the recording, please send me an email afterwards. And then we also have 2 handouts for you today. So if you go to the bottom of your control panel, there's a handouts tab, and you can download the 2 handouts that we will be referencing today. Our virtual workshop today is presented by Lisa Tedesco, the Deputy District Director of the Nebraska District Office at the U.S. Small Business Administration. Earlier in her career, Lisa worked on the other side of things, working for a large prime contractor. She's extremely knowledgeable in the government contracting area. She's been in government contracting for many years. And so she's here to talk to us today about All Small, including the DoD Mentor Protege Program. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Catherine. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today on a hot Friday morning. Hopefully we can get you through this. We are scheduled for a couple hours, but hopefully, depending on questions at the end, we can get you through this and out the door a little bit quicker today to start your weekend. So yes, as Catherine mentioned, my name is Lisa Tedesco. I am the Deputy District Director here at the Small Business Administration. My primary focus on the technical side is government contracting. As Catherine mentioned, I've been in the world of government contracting in both the private and public sector for about the last 20 years. So seen lots of changes and things that have come about. Been with SBA for about the last 10 years of that career. And so I think what I'm going to talk about real quick. So normally when we have these classes in person prior to COVID, we would have a little early discussion, with people in the room to talk about yourselves and your businesses, and also talk a little bit about SBA. So I just have a couple of quick slides for those of you that, again, I don't know who's on the call and who's participated in our workshops before, but just to give you an idea of who and what the Small Business Administration does. I suppose prior to mid-March, there may have been some individuals and entrepreneurs and small businesses that hadn't maybe known what SBA did or what we do, but now, thanks to the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP loan program, we've become quite popular. We are the ones administering that program for the Department of Treasury for small businesses that have been impacted by COVID. But generally speaking, outside of the unfortunate situation with COVID, we basically serve three primary roles. The two that we talk the most about are, of course, what I'm talking about today, which is small businesses and access to government contracts and government contract set-asides. But of course, also our traditional SBA guaranteed loan programs, which some of you may know about. And then also our counseling assistance that we provide through our partners, such as the PTAC and Nebraska Business Development Center. But we also have other resources around the state that can help with small business and entrepreneur, anything from startup to selling your business. So we help make those connections for businesses as well. But we also offer a few things that maybe some don't know. We do have an Office of Advocacy, which is an internal group that meets with constituents. If you have any types of issues that you want addressed as a small business, you can always reach out to our Office of Advocacy. They are an independent voice for small business, although they're housed within SBA. So you may want to look them up on our website if you ever have anything that you want challenged or you have a question about. I think they're a great resource. Our disaster assistance program, which is really one of the funding mechanisms that we're providing through this sort of national disaster with the pandemic. But we certainly do provide a lot of assistance for what we call natural disasters, things that happen, floods, tornadoes, and that kind of thing. We have an entire program that helps with disaster assistance. And that actually is also provided to individuals as well, not just businesses. And then our surety bonding program. So similar to our loan guarantee program, we have a surety bonding program where we can help guarantee bonds on construction type contracts. So a couple of other things that we do. The point I want to make about our not only our advocacy, but our role in oversight. So we assist Congress with providing data and statistics on how small businesses are doing in the marketplace, particularly on the federal contracting side. So you may see or hear about the SBA scorecard. This is a mechanism that was created a few years ago by where we score the agencies on how they're doing with awarding small businesses contracts. And then we provide those measurements to Congress for review. And this helps define and shape, future policy on how we can make things better, for small businesses. We also set up, again, by way of those policies, any small business regulations, which I'll reference a few of those in this presentation and others. Everything that we do, you can find in the Code of Federal Regulation. So some of you may be familiar with that. It's the CFR. You can find it electronically under the ecfr.gov. This is where all of our regulations on our small business programs are handled. It's not only SBA's role, but your role as a small business, your eligibility, compliance, those kinds of things. We also manage the protest side of things. So if there is a protest that's filed with an agency, that gets sent to SBA for review. So we do both size and status protests. So there may be a protest on the size of the small business or the status as a veteran, for example, or a woman-owned business. So we handle a lot of the protests that come through the agencies. I also want to mention real quickly PCRs and CMRs. They serve an important sort of behind the scenes role at SBA. Procurement Center representatives, which we have one here in our office, Charles Mason. He is essentially the liaison to the agencies. So his role is to help work with the agencies in Nebraska, in this case, to make sure we're giving every practicable opportunity for small businesses to compete on contracts. So we're looking to push for those set-asides. On the other side, we have what we call a CMR, commercial market representative, and these are individuals who actually work with the large prime contractors to make sure that they are also meeting their subcontracting goals on their large contracts. So we have a couple of presentations outside of this one where I get a little bit more into what these roles are, but both of these roles and the detail is also on our website. So if you're interested, you can certainly look these people up. Commercial market representatives, CMRs, they're a great resource in terms of finding out, what large prime contractors have the large contracts with Department of Defense. Do they have subcontracting plans? And how can you make maybe some inroads into strategic teaming with some of these large primes? And I'm going to mention a couple of these types of things throughout this presentation, just in reference to the All Small Mentor Protege program. But we do offer other workshops throughout the year where I get a little bit more into strategies for teaming, strategies for joint venturing. So keep an eye out for that as well. And then the BOS, the Business Opportunity Specialist, that is a role within the district office, each district office of the SBA, which incidentally, our district office, we have one here in Nebraska. It's located here in Omaha. They're the person that works with the agencies for the 8A program. So if you want to learn more about the 8A program, that is a program for economically and socially disadvantaged individuals who can get certified. It's a pretty robust, lengthy program, and it's really a business development program for firms that are eligible for that program. And we have an individual, a BOS, that works with those certified firms to increase, their success in government contract through various business development efforts. So we do a class actually on the 8A program. We also do classes on our other certifications. So again, as Catherine mentioned, check out the event list and you can find out when we're doing our next one. Okay, so real quick, in reference to the All Small Mentor Protege program, which is what we're going to talk about today, I just wanted to set that up a little bit. For those of you that are either already in federal contracting or want to get involved in federal contracting, understanding teaming as part of your marketing strategy, I think, is very important. Whether it be a standard, what I would call a standard prime sub relationship, or perhaps a joint venture, which we're going to talk about joint ventures a little bit, or a full contractual agreement through the Mentor Protege program. It's important to think about teaming strategies as part of your overall strategy, particularly in federal contracting, because we have seen a trend, especially in the last, say 15 years, but even more recently, agencies are looking for ways, as you can imagine in the government, we're looking for ways to streamline processes, be more efficient, be more effective with, taxpayer dollars, essentially. So Acquisition strategies within the agencies are becoming much more consolidated. So they're putting requirements and contracts together. And this sort of consolidation of requirements has really made these contracts more complex, a lot larger scopes of work that require a lot more different types of expertise within one contract, and just quite frankly, the sheer size of some of these contracts. So how does a small business compete for that work? Well, one of the ways is, again, through these various types of teaming strategies. So it is definitely something that I think you want to consider as you move forward and as you want to grow. Certainly, if you're a very small business, you want to start small, gain some past performance. But again, as you grow and you're looking at these more complex projects, teaming is really becoming a viable option for actually winning this type of work. And the regulations are starting to reflect these changes in the way we do business, quite frankly. So you always want to be on the lookout for that as well. So just again, to set this up a little bit, there are various types of teaming options. So again, I mentioned just, probably what the majority of what you might see out there, or what you as a small business might be participating in, is just a simple teaming agreement. That's a prime subcontractor relationship between two companies, where the prime obviously is the lead on the contract, and you are a subcontractor to that prime. So again, that's probably what we see most often. But again, in order to be the prime on a contract, you have to be able to meet all of the requirements for eligibility on that particular scope of work. So therefore, if you can't, as a single prime, again, maybe moving to a joint venture where you share responsibilities as the prime. So you do create a separate legal entity and you share responsibilities as the prime contractor. So we'll get a little bit more into joint ventures, because that seems to be the most common. And then the third type of teaming option is the Mentor-Protege program. So it is a more robust program, which we're going to talk about. And then you would form joint ventures within that Mentor-Protege program, or excuse me, within that Mentor-Protege agreement, in order to pursue specific contracts. There are additional benefits on this issue of affiliation through the Mentor-Protege program, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about as we go through this. I'll move this off my screen. All right, so the All Small Business Mentor-Protege program actually was authorized back when the Small Business Act was really completely revamped in 2010. Was when the Mentor-Protege program in and of itself was developed. Back then, this program was actually only available to 8A certified firms. But then in 2013, through the National Defense Authorization Act, Congress actually put into place that SBA would implement the Mentor-Protege program for all small businesses, which was really great. We were happy to see that this particular program was going to be able to open up for all small businesses. So it took a few years to get the implementation and the regulations in place. And so really what this program did was create a single all-inclusive Mentor-Protege program, but it is modeled after the 8A program. So it is very similar, but again, it's open to all types of small businesses. And it's a Mentor-Protege relationship that, as it states, and we're going to talk a little bit about the types of assistance, but it's really an opportunity to develop proteges with development assistance, particularly within the federal contracting world, to help you grow as a small business. Congress decided that shouldn't be only available to 8A certified firms, that all small businesses, especially as you're growing, this gives you an opportunity to, add to the supply chain of the government and really help you build capacity and past performance so that you can ultimately, go and compete on your own. It really is a win-win. I believe it can be a real win-win situation for both the mentor and the protege. I will say, years ago, there was a little bit of a stigma to the mentor protege programs that mentors, were trying to take advantage of small businesses. But in reality, if done right and if a good relationship is established, prior to getting into an official agreement, it can really benefit both sides. Again, it does give mentors access to contracts that they may not have had access to, otherwise. But it also, again, provides a protege with the capacity to be able to compete and, of course, then become successful, build past performance, and then eventually compete on your own. So it really can be a good win-win relationship, of course, with the emphasis that it must be a good established relationship right from the get-go. So, we suggest that you start researching and trying to find a good mentor within your industry and really start to build a relationship prior to submitting an application. And just a little bit of a caveat, SBA as an agency is not a matching program. We do not match you up with mentors, but certainly locally at the district office level and certainly with PTAC, we can work with you if you really are not sure who you should be looking at. But it should be a mentor, a business that is already got some experience in contracting, perhaps, and within your industry, and can impart good value on you and, again, help you grow. All right, so to get into the sort of breaking it down and what the program actually is, so if you want to go back and review the regulations on the program, the regulations on the Mentor Protege program are at 13 CFR Part 125. So again, I mentioned the CFR, that's the Code of Federal Regulation, which sort of sets up all of the policy for our various small business programs. Part 125.9 is what covers the SBA Mentor Protege program. So again, final rule went into effect in 2016. Well, I can't believe we've already been accepting applications and been in this program for 4 years already. Again, just a little bit of history. It streamlined the rules of the 8A program. So for those of you that may be familiar with the 8A program, it really streamlined those rules and made it a little bit easier in order to apply. So we're going to talk about that. It does prescribe the content for how you form joint ventures under the program. So in order to, once you establish an official approved agreement, Mentor Protege agreement, you form a joint venture to pursue a specific contract. So again, we're going to talk about those in a little bit. The process is centralized at headquarters, so you will apply on a system which is at certify.sba.gov. Eventually, all of our programs will be housed at certify.sba, but that is where you'll formally apply to the program. It does not go to the district office level, similar to what the 8A program does. It is actually centralized at headquarters. So your application will, that you submit online does go to SBA headquarters in Washington. Again, they're all submitted through the Certify system, so no paper applications. A few years ago, these were paper applications, so no paper applications. There is an online course tutorial. It's just a few questions. It is a requirement by both the mentor and the protege. So before you even submit your agreement application, you do each have to take the online course and submit your certificate that you've completed the course. You are subject to an annual review to track milestones, and we'll talk about that. And then again, your agreement is required via joint venture. This is the website where some of the attachments that we've given you including all of the things I'm going to talk about with eligibility and the benefits, are all located on our website as well at the All Small MPP within SBA.gov. So some basic rules that you need to consider as a protege. So in order to participate in the program, you do have to obviously be a for-profit business, and you have to be considered a small business based on the NAICS code, which is the NAICS code that you're going to request under your mentor protege agreement. Now, I did not, for the sake of time, I did not include information in this particular class about NAICS codes and how you consider yourself a small business. So if you do have questions about that, I would suggest reaching out to Catherine. If you don't already have a PTAC counselor or consultant working with you, but you will have to understand what NAICS code, which is North American Industry Classification System code, that you do business in, and then you'll have to make sure the corresponding size standard to that code shows that you are a small business. So you'll have to do that first, because you will have to select a single NAICS code that you will apply under. And therefore, you do need to show that you have some prior experience working in the industry. So it doesn't have to necessarily be federal contracts, but that if you're going to select the, electrical NAICS code, I'm just going to pick one, have you actually done work, electrical work. So you will have to describe that work and what you've done so far. Of course, your mentor as well must be organized for profit, and they are allowed to have some ownership equity in your business. They may or may not. I will say probably this is somewhat rare. It does happen. A mentor can purchase up to 40% equity in your business. So again, if you already have a prior relationship with your mentor, maybe they've invested in you, that's okay. It just can't be more than 40%. You can't have already been determined to have affiliation for other reasons by SBA. So there can't be a prior relationship, or maybe you were found to be affiliated with your mentor already. And that's affiliation by regulation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about affiliation in a second. But if there was, for example, you pursued a contract in the past together, it was protested for some reason, and you were found to be affiliated with your mentor, and by affiliation, you actually assume their size as a basic description. Therefore, you're not a small business. So if you ran into that kind of issue, just let us know. That's something we can walk you through, but likely that has probably not happened. And then, of course, both you and your mentor do have to have an active registration in SAM. So you need to make sure your business is registered in the SAM.gov vendor portal. Any business that does work with the federal government has to be registered in SAM. So if you are not already registered in SAM, you'll again want to work with PTAC to help get yourself in that system. An additional bullet that I want to add here, it's not necessarily a rule, but something to consider. And I'm going to jump ahead a little. The biggest benefit to the mentor protege, the SBA mentor protege program, is this exclusion from affiliation. So I'm going to try not to get too deep in the legal weeds, but I will talk about what that exclusion means. But the basic premise of that is that when you pursue a small business set aside with your approved mentor, the approved mentor assumes your small business size status. That's the biggest benefit to this program. Therefore, one additional bullet I would add here is when you're thinking about your strategy for mentor protege and teaming and joint ventures, you want to select a mentor who is considered a large business in your industry sector. It doesn't necessarily benefit you to select another small business. Now, certainly you can form joint ventures and teaming relationships with other small businesses, and in fact, you should. There's great benefit to that as well. But particularly to spend the time and effort on this particular program, you'll want to locate a mentor who is a large business within this NAICS code that you're selecting. So that's where you're going to get your biggest benefit in terms of teaming together or joint venturing together to pursue these small business set-asides. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but I do have a lot of small businesses that come to me and say, oh, I want to be a protege, I want to do a mentor-protege agreement. I found another great small business, we work well together, you know, and so on, again, which is great. But there's better strategies, better use of your time for putting those teams together outside of the mentor-protege. Again, because the biggest benefit is this exclusion from affiliation. So you really want to locate a business a mentor who is a large business within that industry sector that you're working in. So generally speaking, so how many mentors can I have? How many proteges can a mentor have? So generally speaking, a protege can only have one mentor at a time. And conversely, a mentor can typically, usually, generally, the regulation says generally, can only have one protege at a time. Now, there are some nuances to that. A protege may be able to have two mentors at one time if they are in unrelated industry codes. So you wouldn't be able to have two mentors in the same code, but depending on what your business does, if you have a variety of expertises within your business, you could potentially have two mentors in two separate unrelated industries. So so that's sort of the first piece to that. And then the second piece to that is if you're trying to acquire a specific expertise that your first mentor doesn't have. So again, it has to be unrelated NAICS codes, but it also may be you're looking for just completely different types of mentoring assistance as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be just contracting assistance. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. So therefore, SBA could authorize a small business to be both a protege and a mentor at the same time, where the small business can demonstrate that the second relationship, again, will not compete or conflict with the first relationship. So again, just make sure they're unrelated NAICS codes if you decide to pursue more than one relationship. And as I mentioned earlier, a mentor will generally have no more than one protege at a time, but can have up to three, actually. But again, the same thing. If that one mentor has three proteges, they cannot be competing them against each other, essentially. So they can't have three proteges in the same industry where the proteges will be, essentially competing against each other. So it would have to be in separate sectors. And there are some large, very large prime contractors that have, like a Northrop Grumman, for example, that has several mentor-protege agreements because they have some very different sectors of types of federal work that they go after. So it is possible to have as well. So eligibility is pretty straightforward. Really both mentors and proteges need to possess good character. You can't be delinquent on anything to the federal government. But the mentor also has to be able to demonstrate that they have the capability to carry out, whatever assistance it is that you're looking for as part of the narrative that you write. The mentor has to be able to show that they have the capability to actually help you in that particular area of assistance that you're looking for. Of course, as I said, can't be debarred or suspended from doing anything with the federal government. And again, has to show that they're going to impart value to the protege firm. On the other side, you as a protege, again, I mentioned this already, you have to be small under your primary NAICS code or the NAICS code that you've identified that you need assistance with as part of your agreement. If you're a firm that does seek to qualify as a small business protege under a secondary NAICS code, the firm has to demonstrate how that relationship is, is a logical business progression. So again, this is going to go back to what you show in your narrative, the type of work that you do. So what the SBA is looking for is putting an agreement together and putting a mentor protege, strategy together, if you will, to pursue work under, the primary thing that you do. Now you may have some secondary things that you do or ancillary type, expertise within your business, which is potentially okay, but you have to show how you're trying to grow within that area. So we'll talk about a little bit more about that too in a little bit with the mentor protege agreement. But do keep in mind the caveat at the bottom, which says SBA will not authorize any mentor protege agreements in a secondary NAICS code if you have not performed any work. So, you can't, I try to think of something extreme. You can't, let's say you own a daycare and you decide now you want to break into construction. So you want a construction NAICS code and you want to apply under a mentor protege agreement because you think there's work to be done in construction. So again, it has to show that sort of logical progression of doing that work. So what's a solution to a scenario like that? You start your construction business. You maybe just do a simple teaming arrangement. You start, getting some work under your belt. You start working with some other contractors. And then potentially when you're looking at your next phase of growth, then maybe you look into a mentor protege agreement. So something to that type of scenario. So I mentioned this already, mentors and proteges, you're both responsible for finding your own counterparts. So again, SBA does not necessarily match you up with mentors, but certainly at the local level, these are things that we can help assist with. Your mentors, again, can't be debarred or suspended, so they do have to be eligible to be awarded contracts. You're going to have to include some measurable milestones and some development assistance that aligns with your business plan. So you will have to submit sort of a mini version of your business plan, if you will, and then show how your mentor is going to assist with the types of things that you've developed in this plan. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that specific assistance in a second. Again, SBA won't authorize MPAs and secondary NAICS codes that you haven't performed any work, and it's work in general, not just federal work. With this particular program, the all small mentor protege, no financial statements or tax returns are required, so that's great. You will self-certify yourself to be a small business, so you don't have to turn in a bunch of financials. Again, you do have to have a business plan. That doesn't necessarily have to be SBA approved. That's within the 8A program. We have to approve 8A business plans. But if you have a general business plan, you will want to submit that. Again, to reemphasize the certificate of completion on the training. So you'll have to turn in your certificates that you've completed the training. And your mentor protege agreement is reviewed annually with a 3-year maximum term. However, SBA, depending on the development assistance and what you've reported in that assistance, they may be willing to extend it for another 3 years. So we'll talk about that as well. So we do have a checklist on the Certify website. I didn't include it as an attachment because it's essentially these particular bullets. But it is really pretty simple. The checklist itself, there's only really a few documents required, the agreement being the main focus. But again, you must be actively registered in SAM. Both of you have to be actively registered in SAM. You have to select a NAICS code that you're going to make as part of your agreement. And then you have to submit the documentations, again, your certificate of completion of the training, the completed business plan. I always tell businesses I talk with, again, this business plan that you have, I think that you need to have that be a working document that also includes a narrative or a picture, if you will, or a vision of how your mentor is going to work with you as part of that plan. So make sure you incorporate them really into your plan. If you have any other active mentor-protege agreements with other agencies, which we're going to talk about Department of Defense, you will have to disclose that information. If you've gone through any protest or size determinations prior, maybe on some other federal contracts, you would need to include that information. And then, of course, your mentor-protege agreement with your type of assistance that you're seeking. So this is really kind of a screenshot of what the checklist looks like and what you want to include in your mentor-protege agreement. And so keep in mind again, it is approved for 3 years with an option to renew it for another 3 years if you can really demonstrate that you're on a good progression with this mentor, but you need an additional, time frame to be able to meet your milestones that you're looking for. And so you really want to identify what those development areas are that you need assistance in. And I am going to show that real quick. I apologize. Let's see. This is what I wanted to get to. So there are basically 6 types of assistance. So when you write your narrative and you put together your agreement and you include what I call a chart, you really have to show that you're going to meet one of these 6, at least one of these 6 types of assistance. So think about what you're trying to accomplish with your mentor and make it fit within one of these 6 categories. Because really these 6 categories they're high level. They pretty much incorporate about everything that you might need assistance with. First and foremost, most businesses look into this program for number 3, which is contracting assistance. So maybe there's things that you're looking at together of contracts you want to pursue together. And you've already done your market research. You know what you're hoping to do within that 3-year time frame. But it may be things like, just business systems or accounting systems or hiring policies, any type of assistance really that it might be just general business development. Maybe they're going to help you figure out how to grow your business within your industry, not necessarily just federal contracting. But you do have to select what areas of assistance that, one or more areas of assistance. And as part of that, this is my example. This is not included in necessarily in your mentor-protege agreement, but you could include it as an attachment. I think it's a great way to summarize what your plan is. So you have to talk about what your business need is. So again, that's the 6 different, I just included all of them in my example. So you may do one or all of these. So that's the protege's business need. And then you're going to talk about the plan for addressing that need. So what are the specific things you hope to address? The SBA is going to want a timeline to accomplish. So, maybe you're just going to do a contracting assistance and you're going to pursue 2 contracts in the first quarter, X number in the second quarter and so on. Maybe you are they're going to help you, create an HR policy or a hiring policy. We hope to have that in place by the end of year 1, and so on. So they're going to want to look at understanding what those timelines are, and then what is the deliverable. So if it is let's just call it either an HR policy or maybe a QA/QC policy, or a QA/QC document, what's that deliverable look like? And then what is the milestone or outcome that you've achieved with it? So this chart is just a way for you to kind of summarize that in a snapshot for the mentor-protege team. And then of course you're going to include your detail from that. But this is a good way for you to sort of, again, summarize what you plan to do. Now I'm going to go back a little bit. So as a, little bit more detail on that chart. So as part of your mentor-protege agreement, you're going to include, all the basic things about the companies, your business plan and so on. But again, your outline, the biggest emphasis on your outline is, again, what is that business need? What is the ultimate goal that you're trying to achieve? And you're going to, again, you will have to actually select at least one of those eligible categories of assistance. The mentors plan to address that need, the timeline for the need to be met, and then the measure by which SBA will determine the success or accomplishment of that goal. So you will supply reporting at the end of every year. So again, if your application and your initial agreement said, in the first 6 months or the first quarter, this is what we hope to accomplish. By the time you turn in your report, they're going to want to see, have you met those milestones? Have you met the things that you agreed upon in your original agreement? That's really pretty much it on that part. Just to give you an idea of the timeline, again, I already mentioned this, your agreement generally lasts up to 2 years, or excuse me, up to 3 years, again, with an annual certification, if you will. So you will have to turn in your annual report. And these are the types of things that once your agreement is approved, you will get detail from SBA as to exactly what you have to submit. But you will have to turn in your annual report that really speaks again to that summary of what I just showed, which is if we said we were going to accomplish, these 5 things in that first year, did we? And if we did, what was the outcome of that? The actual requirement on the timeline is within 30 days of your anniversary, you have to report again on what happened in the prior year. So any technical or management assistance that was provided, if that's what you included as assistance, you'll have to speak to that. If there were any equity investments made, they'll want the details of those investments, which includes any loans. So if the mentor maybe loaned the business some money, you'll have to report that information. If your mentor just awarded you subcontracts as part of this, they're going to want to see not only the subcontracts that were awarded, but any federal contracts you pursued together. They're going to want detail on, so if you said, we were awarded $1 million in contracts last year, they'll want the detail, as to what was the detail behind those, that $1 million in contracts. And then you'll want to include a narrative as well, describing any success or assistance you've had outside of contracting, that met any of the other assistance areas that you requested. So if you feel like there is, a problem is occurring within the relationship, you'll definitely want to address this with SBA early on. You don't want to just end your mentor-protege agreement on your own. You will want to talk with SBA about, what the issues of concern that you have, particularly, if you have contracts together as part of that agreement. Something, you definitely need to talk to SBA about that so you can, work through those particular issues. But there are ways, obviously, of getting out of the agreement, and there are consequences to the mentor for not providing you with that assistance. So, if you reach out to SBA, they're going to reach out to the mentor to talk about what has gone on, what is the determination for the issue. If the mentor either fails to respond or, doesn't really supply an adequate reasons for, why this relationship is failing, several different things can happen. So SBA can terminate the mentor-protege agreement, so they can just terminate it. It will make the firm ineligible as a mentor for a certain period of time, so they would not be allowed to be in any other mentor-protege relationships for a period of 2 years. And the third bullet, which is probably one of the most important, particularly if you have contracts together, SBA can get involved, work with the procuring agency, again, depending on how bad it gets or how bad the particular situation is, to either literally stop work order on the contract itself or work with the agency to turn the contract over to the protege. So this is just, this is all laid out in detail in the regulation if you want to look at it. And, not to scare anyone, but certainly important to understand that, the best intentions can always, you never know what can happen. So there are ways to, work around tough issues in this program. So you just want to make sure you keep SBA apprised of any problems or issues that might arise. Talked about that. So that's pretty much, in terms of eligibility and what you need to do, it is pretty much that simple, really. I'll use this moment real quick before we talk a little bit about the benefits to mention the handouts. So Catherine mentioned the handouts. I included both the mentor-protege agreement templates for both the SBA and the Department of Defense. So we're just going to spend a little time at the end talking about Department of Defense program. But I did include a template of the mentor-protege agreement that you will need to submit, including the narrative, the business plan, and then what my recommendation with sort of the example matrix as part of your agreement. And that's essentially what you'll submit. And your completed certificates of the training module. And that's pretty much it in terms of what you'll submit and what makes you eligible. But really, I would say the important part is, what are the benefits of the program? And as I mentioned earlier, the biggest benefit to the All Small Mentor-Protege program is this exclusion from affiliation. So again, under unapproved mentor-protege agreement, when you locate a particular contracting opportunity that you want to pursue together. Now, depending on that situation, you may certainly do prime sub relationships, and you can still do separate teaming agreements under your mentor-protege. Again, depending on where you're at in the development of your business and federal contracting, you certainly may want to, for a period, just do a prime sub relationship with your mentor, and that's not a problem. You can do that. But when you determine that you want to joint venture, so in essence be equals on the project, you'll form a joint venture where you create a separate legal entity to pursue that contract. Now, if you're pursuing a small business set aside, which is essentially what you would be doing, or where the benefit is with the program, on that small business set aside, and when I say small business set aside, know that I mean any socioeconomic program. So it might be a service disabled veteran set aside if you're service disabled veteran, or if you're woman owned, it would be a woman owned small business set aside. If you decide to pursue that small business set aside as a joint venture with your mentor, this makes them essentially eligible as a small business to prime that contract with you in order to be eligible for that small business set aside. So this is the only program, the only mentor-protege program that it provides that exclusion from affiliation. So again, it allows the small business to not only leverage the capacity and past performance and experience of your mentor, but then, as I mentioned, it also provides opportunity for your mentor to, really gain access, not only help you. I mean, first and foremost, it is to mentor you to grow as a business. But in terms of contracting, it provides them an opportunity to pursue contracts that they may not have otherwise been eligible for. And as you know, again, as I mentioned earlier, as small business contracts and consolidation are occurring and these small business set-asides are getting larger and larger, this is a very viable option. I'm not sure what types of businesses we have on the call, but the big, well-known IT contract is, actually, I believe it just closed. The STARS 3 contract came out. These are opportunities where these small business set-aside contracts are large. Sometimes you actually can see these small business contracts in the billions. There's no one small business, almost guaranteed no one small business that's pursuing any of those contracts on their own. They're joint ventures, they're teaming arrangements, they're mentor-protege agreements, coming together again as these large teams to pursue these contracts. So large business mentors are also taking notice. So again, we're going to talk a little bit about what a joint venture is. So I just kind of wanted to use this slide to lay out a little bit of sort of what is the kind of a little bit of the difference. And I've kind of already touched a little bit on what is the difference between a joint venture and just a traditional teaming relationship. So really the biggest difference between a joint venture and a prime sub relationship is where the risk lies. So in a joint venture, both parties are considered the prime. So you distribute risk basically evenly, versus a teaming arrangement, the risk lies at the prime level with the contracting agency. So it's risk and its levels of responsibility. So you have to keep that in mind depending on the type of arrangement that you're putting together. So, but when it comes to revenue and profit, in a joint venture, both parties split profits and losses. So it's the joint venture is paid for the contract versus again a teaming arrangement. Prime is awarded the contract, is paid by the agency, and then then the prime pays their subs. In a joint venture, it is a new legal entity or a separate entity that has its own DUNS number. Versus again a prime sub relationship, no new legal entity is created. It's just a teaming arrangement between the two firms. Subcontracting, so there's limits on how much can be subcontracted out. Subcontracting limits in a teaming arrangement only apply to the prime, but subcontracting limits to a joint venture apply to the joint venture as a whole, so to both parties. Again, I mentioned both parties are responsible for the entire contract under a joint venture. Under a teaming arrangement, only the prime is responsible for the contract. And what's key when you're submitting a proposal, and again, one of the benefits to you as a protege in this particular program, past performance is considered for both parties. So they will take into consideration when they're doing evaluation, they will consider past performance for both parties, which conversely in a teaming arrangement, generally speaking, subcontracting past performance does not apply to the evaluation criteria. So again, just a little bit of differences. Both have pluses, obviously, both have minuses. And again, depending on your business and depending on your business development strategy, you may do both of these and be quite successful at both. But certainly you may, if you're just getting started, you may again start with a teaming arrangement to help you build your own past performance so that you can eventually prime or at least be a partner as a prime in a joint venture. So just a little bit about joint ventures as part of, so it's just good to get a basic understanding of how to structure your joint venture as part of your mentor-protege agreement, or honestly, if you're doing joint ventures otherwise as well. So you may, again, there's various paths to the same success. You may have a mentor-protege agreement where you form joint ventures with your mentor. But then you may have separate joint ventures with other small businesses to pursue other types of small business set-asides, depending. So again, I've just included some basic pieces of a joint venture. We are going to do several classes where we heavily get into joint venture agreements and how to structure them. But generally speaking, you'll want to set forth the purpose of the joint venture in the joint venture agreement. So you have a separate agreement that both parties sign, has to be in writing. Your joint ventures under the Mentor-Protege program are not approved by SBA. So your Mentor-Protege agreement's approved, your joint venture is not, so you hold on to your joint venture. You still will designate the small business as the managing joint venture partner. We're going to talk about how you split ownership of that entity. So again, you have a Mentor-Protege agreement, but it isn't specific to that joint venture entity. So this is now a separate legal entity under the Mentor-Protege. So you're going to talk about how you're going to split profits, how ownership is going to be shared. Because remember, if you win, $100,000, let's call it $1 million contract, that $1 million contract is paid to the joint venture. So you have to talk in the joint venture about how that entity or how that legal entity is structured, how you're going to split profits. You're going to have a separate bank account for the joint venture so that that's where payment can go. You'll also need to talk about how you're going to split the work. So depending on the contract, you'll want to be real specific about what each party brings to the table. So if it's equipment, facilities, staff, expertise, whatever it may be, you need to delineate what each member of the joint venture team brings to the table. And then you have some of your legal jargon where you're talking about how you obligate the parties to the performance of the contract. Because again, remember, you share risk under a joint venture. You have to talk about the signatory, who's going to be the signatory on contracts, who's going to manage the administrative records, who's going to be the management of the contract, and so on. So there's a lot of sections to a joint venture. All of these pieces, again, because of time, I'm not going to get real heavy into this. We will do a separate class on this. But again, if you want to review this, we actually, on the SBA's website under the All Small Mentor-Protege page, there is also a template for joint ventures. So if you wanted to download that template as well, you could get a good idea, or again, read the regulation on joint ventures so you would know exactly how you need to structure your joint venture. And it's important from the standpoint of, no, SBA does not approve joint ventures, but where it may come into play as an issue, one, the contracting office may require you submit your joint venture agreement as part of your proposal. So you need to keep that in mind. But it will also come into play if there is a potential protest. So it is possible that someone that's bidding against you wants to protest your joint venture for whatever reason. You need to be able to supply this documentation as part of a protest. So you'll want a good, thorough joint venture agreement that meets all the requirements of the regulation. Because if you are protested, SBA will follow specifically that regulation in making sure you've structured your joint venture correctly. So before you apply, again, I've kind of mentioned these things, and these are some little tips that the All Small Mentor-Protege program has provided. Make sure you're both registered in SAM. Make sure you've completed the tutorial prior to ever putting the application together. Know which NAICS codes you're going to include as part of your agreement. Make sure you have a good, thorough business plan that really does incorporate your mentor. Make sure you obviously put together the agreement, and then you will have to get the business registered in Certify. So you'll need to get the Protege registered as a in-certify, and PTAC can help you with that, getting your profile built, I guess I should say. You do have to provide a profile, and there's some nuances to certify on how it associates your profile and certify with your SAM record and your DUNS. So you want to make sure you have, everything is active and current prior to, creating your user profile and certify. So just some tips that I thought were pretty good actually by SBA headquarters. Now, again, we will be doing a class specifically on teaming strategies and how do you find good strategic partners. But in terms of finding a good mentor, these were a few tips that SBA headquarters put together that I thought were pretty good. Look at if you are already heavily in, again, you're an existing business, you're heavily in your industry, maybe you've already started doing some contracts, even maybe at the local level. I mean, you likely know who your large business competition is. Think about those businesses, think about their reputation in the industry, and think about them as potential mentor partners. So do your research. This is sort of marketing 101. Understand who your competition are. They may make a good mentor. Again, somebody who's reputable in your industry, already maybe has some contracts under their belt, has already established that reputation with government entities. So look into those things. Know how you complement what they already do. You'll want to know whether they have good supplier relationships, again, or what other sort of experience they have working with the federal government. I mean, their reputation in the industry is certainly important, but obviously another layer of that is what is their experience working in the federal sector? Have they already established themselves within the federal sector? Which is, of course, the primary reason why you're pursuing this specific program. Be very clear about what you need from the relationship and be sure it's reflected in the agreement that you work out and including in your business plan. You want to be able to show SBA that there is a real thoughtful long-term strategy on how you plan to grow your business by working with this mentor. And of course, above all, make sure that what they're offering matches what you need. So when you map out that assistance diagram, you want to make sure that what they can provide, really specifically what you're looking for in business in your needs. And you want to make sure you establish that even before you put the agreement together. Again, sit down with a mentor, talk about the things that you need, talk about the gaps that you have in your business plan, and where they can really help to fulfill that need. So that's really it on the All Small Mentor Protege. Again, you have an agreement template. You can get the checklists out there. If you have any questions about the pieces once you start to look at the agreement, certainly reach out to me at SBA or to the PTAC, and we can kind of help you with that process. I'm going to spend just a few slides and hopefully get you out a few minutes early and maybe answer some questions. Just in case you're interested in the Department of Defense program. So when the regulation changed to implement the SBA's All Small Mentor Protege program, it actually eliminated all other agency mentor protege programs except for Department of Defense. So honestly, when I worked for a large prime contractor 20 years ago, just about every large agency had a mentor protege program. But with the establishment of this program, Congress did away with those other programs aside from Department of Defense. So the Department of Defense option may be a good one. Most of the large prime contractors have been in this program for years. There's no limit like there is with the All Small program. Of course, there still has to be a fit and a need, but they don't have the limit. And this, again, is the oldest program that's been around the longest. So a lot of the large prime contractors are well established in this, in utilizing this program. And just a primary difference between the Department of Defense program and the SBA program is the emphasis in the Department of Defense program really is that mentor-protege relationship. What do you need as a protege to grow your business within the federal supply chain, and how can that mentor help you get there? Whereas in the SBA program, it is really specific to contracts. And the reason I say that is because of the exclusion from affiliation benefit to pursue those small business contracts. The DoD program does not have that exclusion from affiliation. So this program you're not really using to pursue small business set-asides. This is really to help both the federal government increase its potential vendors in that military supply chain, and by way of also providing more small business subcontractors or small business partners to those large prime contractors to also help with, increasing the supply chain to military and defense. So it's sort of, similar programs, but somewhat I would call a little bit different set, a little different mindset. This program doesn't have the same sort of parameters in terms of time limits and time frames and reporting that the SBA program has. But again, it's a long, well-established program. And real quick, I'm going to jump ahead because the biggest difference too is the type of agreements that are put together. So you don't necessarily put joint ventures together as part of this program. The benefit here on the type of agreement is really to that mentor. So the Department of Defense says to, large business A, by utilizing this program by way of bringing more small businesses into the mix, and again, increasing the supply chain for military and defense, we will provide you, mentor, with benefits by putting these agreements together. So there's essentially two types of agreements that a mentor can submit, either a reimbursable agreement or a credit agreement. So they can actually, a mentor can get credit on their small business subcontracting goals. They can actually get credit based on how much work they provide to you in their contracts. So they have subcontracting goals that they're required to meet on every contract. They can actually get credit, sometimes 3 times the amount, depending on how the agreement is structured. So if they have a 5% subcontracting goal to woman-owned small businesses, they have a mentor-protege agreement with a woman-owned small business, they can get sometimes up to 3 times the credit on that subcontracting plan for including you as a protege. So it provides them additional benefit to meet their subcontracting goals. Conversely, they can do a reimbursable agreement where they can actually get reimbursed the costs, the development costs that they provide assistance to you as a protege. So again, it's certainly the protege benefits in this program. Again, it provides you capacity, it provides you with mentoring, development assistance, but it really is a way for the Department of Defense to again increase their supply chain and provide benefit to the primes to bring in, more small businesses into the mix. So real quick, so to participate, you have to be a small business that's less than half the size corresponding to your NAICS code. So you need to be a pretty small business, and you also have to be considered a disadvantaged business. So you need to be an SDB, WSB, Service Disabled Vet, or HUBZone certified. If you are, quote, just a regular small business and you don't meet any of those other categories, there again, because they're trying to bring in new types of businesses, you have to be considered a non-traditional defense contractor, or you have to currently provide services in the private sector that shows by bringing those capabilities into the Department of Defense, you can find a way to meet those Department of Defense needs. So a little bit different in terms of eligibility. It is, again, a program primarily to help disadvantaged businesses become, successful and as contractors in Department of Defense acquisition. And to participate as a mentor, if we by chance have any of those on the phone or on the call on the webinar, you do have to have at least one active contract with a subcontracting plan in order to participate. So that's really the only eligibility. This is a screenshot of the checklist. So it's very similar to SBA's in terms of you have to talk about what kind of development assistance is the small business looking for. They don't really necessarily give you specific parameters. SBA's program, as I mentioned, has sort of 6 categories. You have to fit it in. Department of Defense doesn't necessarily have any specific categories, but you do have to directly talk about, again, what are the needs of the protege, what are the needs within the supply chain, and how is putting this relationship together going to meet that need, and then the cost to do so, and the milestones. They're much more specifically interested in the cost, especially if you do a reimbursable agreement. They want the mentor to quantify the cost for that type of development assistance. And so that's how they determine a reimbursable contract. But this is some samples of assistance. It is, although very similar to SBA's types of assistance, it can really fit sort of any type of category within your industry. So this is just some examples. Again, financial contract management, business development strategy, HR planning, and so on. Of course, Department of Defense is heavy, on the engineering and technical side. So you may want specific assistance in developing that technical side of your business as well. So they expand the types of assistance to be, heavy technical. And I apologize, this screen's probably very small. This is actually just a snapshot right out of the template agreement. So you could look at the agreement, the mentor protege agreement, to get this. Department of Defense loves Gantt charts. So similar to my little matrix I created, Department of Defense likes you to put together a Gantt chart that sort of shows, what are the milestones, when do we plan for those milestones to occur, and then what are the metrics. So again, similar mindset, just set up a little bit differently. But again, you can read the detail in the agreement handout that we provided. So again, this is just a screenshot of the front page of the agreement, where they want you to talk about what is the time frame for this relationship. Each relationship can't exceed 3 years. That's about the only parameter they have. If the mentor is going to ask again for a reimbursable agreement, they do have to really lay out what are going to be the varying costs for the development assistance. And that way they can determine what the reimbursement will be. So Department of Defense just changed their small business page recently. It's business.defense.gov. If you go there, there's actually a lot of really good information on how to do business as a small business, how to do business with the Department of Defense. They have all types of marketing tips, how to market yourself, how to find the small business specialists. So there's a lot of actually other good information out there, but it also includes the Mentor Protege program. So if you click on the link for MPP resources, you'll find the application, the template, some FAQs, So some other things that can help you if you are interested or if your mentor is interested in working in this program. Certainly you could look at both programs. If you want to email questions, they do include an email. So I went ahead and included the email. If you have specific questions about this program, I would go directly to them to ask, if you have any detailed specific questions. Approval time frame I thought was pretty good with DoD. They average about 7 days with a 10-day, typically a 10-day maximum. So you would be able to know pretty quickly if you've been approved in this program. Conversely, with the SBA's program, assuming all of the information is included and everything is in the template, or excuse me, in the agreement, and they have everything they need, it's roughly a 45-day window. Some can be sooner, some can be longer, but roughly 45 days on an SBA mentor protege. So certainly, as you're thinking forward with your marketing plan, if you know that there's an upcoming requirement that you're interested in pursuing with the SBA program, I've had people say, well, I'm going to submit my mentor protege agreement this week because I want to bid on that contract next week. You really do need to give yourself plenty of lead time in order to make sure you've got time to get your application in and get it approved prior to submitting. So if you've already thought, 1 year out, 2 years, 5 years, whatever your business plan is, or whatever strategy you've put together, start thinking about, and if mentor protege or joint venture agreements is part of that federal strategy, start thinking now about who that mentor could be long before you have a contract in mind, so you can start developing that relationship. So this is my contact information. I should have included Catherine Walsh's information, and I apologize, but Veronica Doga, she's the director of the PTAC program. You could certainly reach out to her, but you should reach out to Catherine Walsh as well. She will help you get connected with a PTAC consultant as well on kind of helping you put together your plan and your strategy for moving forward, not only in this program, but any of your other endeavors in federal contracting. You'll want to reach out to Catherine. I believe that is it.
Great, thank you, Lisa. We have a few questions. We had a question on how to find mentors, but I believe you answered that on slide 27. Another question from P. Singh. In becoming a mentor, what is the benefit to a mentor organization? If you want to reiterate that briefly again, I do believe you covered that.
So I'm sorry, say that one more time. The benefit of being a mentor?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I did kind of, touch on that throughout, but obviously the most obvious, I should say, the most obvious answer to that question is, a mentor is there to help build capacity and really help increase the success of the small business, particularly in the federal contracting arena. So a mentor is there first and foremost because they want to be, and they want to help grow that next generation of vendors and suppliers. Not only the next generation, but also, to meet their own needs. Large companies and large mentors, they need subcontractors on their teams. If for no other reason, it's a requirement. So they have to help meet those goals. But also, as I mentioned, particularly to this program, it provides them an opportunity to pursue contracts that they would not also necessarily get to pursue. So I mentioned small business set-asides, they're growing larger and larger. They can't get access to those contracts otherwise. So it intrigues them to look into it with that, again, emphasis on helping that small business grow, get access to contracts that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to get access to, and help you build capacity. So as I mentioned, it really can be a win-win for both sides, because yes, they're getting access to contracts they couldn't, but it also if you think about it as a protege, you couldn't potentially get access to those contracts either because maybe you're too small or don't have enough capacity or infrastructure. So you bring them in to provide that infrastructure, which increases your chances of winning also.
Great, thank you, Lisa. I had another question from Kelly. Does the mentor need to be in the same NAICS code? And specific to her, since she sells a type of toolbox, can she use a hand tool manufacturer as a mentor?
Yeah, I don't, absolutely no reason why not. I mean, both the mentor and the protege likely operate in various industry codes. So they're certainly, you maybe only do one or two specific things, but likely your mentor will have more NAICS code just because of their sheer size and expertises that they have. So they may operate in multiple NAICS codes, and that's okay. You just have to together select one NAICS code that you're attaching to your mentor-protege agreement, if you will. So that's where the development assistance comes in. So I guess, to answer that question, at least from what I can tell you're asking, yes, you could absolutely select that NAICS code, as long as your business plan and the mentor-protege agreement speaks to that type of work and why you've selected that code, then sure, absolutely you can do that. And they could have other NAICS codes that they operate in. That's okay, as long as, again, you select the one that is the one you put on your agreement. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah,
hey, Lisa.
I was going to say Veronica is on the line and would like to say something.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Veronica.
I wanted to go back to the question where how can a company find a mentor? And that question is always surfacing and coming up in discussions when we are talking to businesses. Anytime there is the all small or any kind of mentor protege discussion. I know you talked about a little bit about it, and yes, we can help businesses give them a list of companies that can be mentors, but it's always up to you as a small business to develop the relationship and take that name from us or that company name or a point of contact and build on it. And just remember, as any relationship, any business relationship, this is not gonna just magically become, overnight a mentor-protege relationship. You have to work with that business. They have to know you. They have to know that you're doing a good job, and then they will be able to engage with you in this relationship. So that's my 2 cents, and I just wanted to reiterate how important it is to develop the relationships with that business before you ask them to get into a mentor-protege.
Yeah, I would agree, Veronica. And as I mentioned, if you're, it depends on what your end goal with this relationship is, but certainly if it's to pursue contracts, one of the best ways before you get into the mentor-protege and then again form these joint ventures and things, build that relationship early, like Veronica said, and sub to them. Be a subcontractor on some contracts that they have and see how that relationship goes. That's a less risky, in some senses, a less risky way of determining whether you work well together prior to forming this, more massive thing. So you may want to look at subbing to them on other types of work. Certainly understanding what their reputation is in your industry. So things like that. But yeah, to emphasize what Veronica said, start early, work with them early before you ever, submit an application for the program.
And there also was a question about how to build past performance, and the subbing is the best way to build the past performance. So that's kind of, I don't know if Catherine, that was on your list, but I kind of jumped on to this one.
No, that I don't have that as a question, but it's a good thing to note, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I kind of mentioned that throughout. I mean, I said a lot of things. So, but yeah, I mean, if you're trying to build past performance, you know, the Minute Protege program is going to help with that, but certainly earlier on, subcontracting is really the best way to do that. That's how you're going to get your name out there. Even if you do that first and then you start prime contracting small projects, maybe get a few prime contracts under your belt that are small, scope is not as complex, and then you can start to not only build the past performance, but build that reputation, you know, within the industry. So yeah, as Veronica said, that's really the best way to start that process.
Great, thank you, Lisa. That is all the questions we have. Veronica, did you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Lisa. I believe that's all, and everyone have a great weekend.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you for joining us.